Hello, everyone. Just letting the people roll in here. Thank you for joining us for another Deliverability clinic today. Today we'll be talking about holiday sending and how to stay on the nice list. I'm Brandon Blair, and today will be joining us will be Travis Weatherby. And let's get into things. A little bit about myself. I've been in the email marketing world for 5 years now, and I've helped a wide range of industries throughout my time. And during that time, I've helped deliver emails to their B2B and B2C audiences, really both sides. But let's talk a little bit about Travis.
Yeah, so I'm an Act-On deliverability consultant, 18 plus years in the email deliverability community with, started as on the Hotmail Postmaster team. Went over work for quite a few different ESPs. Been here at Act-On for coming up on almost a year and a half.
Yeah, right on. Look at that beard. How nice.
All right, sending during the holiday season, how to stay out of Krampus's bag.
Yeah, never want to be in Krampus's bag. That's a bad one.
All right. So internet service providers will be on high alert. Oh, so what should I expect in the holiday season? So ISPs, internet service providers, such as like a Comcast, Hotmail, Yahoo, will be on high alert. Why is that? Well, there's an increased email volume and frequency from senders. Obviously, we'd like to send more email during the holiday season, get more reach for your business, and obviously the ISPs know this, so they're on a little bit higher alert. During this time as well, there's an increased malicious spam and phishing attacks. So this is something that they obviously know are coming, and they put processes in place to obviously stop that. And then increased unsolicited mail. So spammers like to take advantage of this situation as well.
Good stuff. All right. So, how should I prepare for holiday sending? There's really three sides that we were thinking, three parts of this that we're thinking: set baselines, plan ahead, and then reinforce sender best practices. So, when you're setting baselines, really looking at how your campaigns are performing now and, setting baselines and, what can you expect for this holiday season? Looking at your delivery rates, your open and click rates, your hard bounces and your soft bounces, seeing where you're having issues now and where issues could arise in the future. But really setting baselines in that off season. So, reviewing all of your emails and, compare them to what, how your holiday emails could be, how they could engage. This will allow you to set accurate, achievable goals and, really set you up for success in this holiday season. Planning ahead, especially if you plan to increase volume, developing a ramp plan to safely, reach that targeted audience. With an influx of mail, these ISPs are definitely, like Travis said, they're going to be on high alert. So they're going to be expecting a lot of mail from a lot of different people. So, safely ramping up that volume is going to be the best way to not raise any red flags to those ISPs. And then really understanding your users' inboxes. They're going to be a lot busier. So what's going to be the best for them? Finding if it's going to be a best time or best day of the week, really just honing in on your audience. And then reinforcing sender best practices. Just really making sure list hygiene is up on, up to date. General rule of thumb is, making sure that your lists have been cleaned, cleaned and verified at least 1 or 2 times a year. So, making sure that that's good to go. Engagement segmentation, we'll talk a little bit about that later. Technical configurations, you always want to make sure your technical configurations are good to go, but making sure DKIM, SPF, you have a DMARC record, everything is good to go so that you're not raising any flags to those ISPs. And then a sunsetting policy and soft bounce limit. We're going to talk a little bit about these later, but those are also really good sender best practices to make sure you got all down to make sure you're preparing for this sending.
So how to understand your stats. A high delivery rates are accepted for delivery rate. indicates that your emails are successfully reaching the intended audience. Open rate, click-through rate, and click-to-open rate. So these are all obviously stats that we all monitor. KPIs is usually what they're called, key performance indicators for your entire program. Hard bounces occurs when an email cannot be delivered permanently due to reasons like an invalid or non-existent email address. So bad email address. Soft bounces are usually block bounces that cannot be delivered temporarily, right? A block is a temporary issue. This could be email. There's also a mailbox full and other network issues that you have. Spam complaint rate. High spam complaint rates can negatively impact your sender reputation, especially during this time. Sending to an increased number of subscribers that may not be on your regular list can cause an increase in spam complaint rates during this time. And then opt-out rate, so the unsubscribe rate, which indicates the percentage of recipients who opted out of your email list.
Good stuff.
Planning ahead. One of the most important aspects of holiday email preparedness is having your email marketing calendar set. ISPs loosen volume thresholds to allow for a larger influx of email for the holiday season. So based on your reputation, you do have a volume of email that you can send safely. If you were to double or triple your email volume, your reputation would not hold that up. And so what ISPs do during this time is loosen it up a little bit because they know people are going to be sending more email during this time. And rather than punish them, they loosen those up a little bit. However, again, during this time, you can make a lot of mistakes by just increasing email volume during this time without a strategy to do so. So what we're talking about is a strategy for increasing your email volume, not just willy-nilly, hey, let's just send to these people we haven't sent to in a year or whatever. So how will you know which piece of content, subject line, click-through action will perform the best? The best way to do this is an A/B split testing ahead of time, ahead of the main campaign, the segment to main list. Again, testing what's going to work. Like Brandon said, again, finding out what works best for timing for the inbox, as well as which subject lines, which call to actions work the best. Again, during this time, you want to be as precise as possible. So, okay, and then the list allows for real-time testing of your subscribers, and essentially gets their opinion on what's working best. Increasing email volume to the right group will provide a much better outcome in comparison to just sending more frequently.
Let me make sure there we go. Right on. Thanks, Travis. Continuing on what he was talking about a little bit, A/B testing, just kind of reiterating on that, is really beneficial. When you're able to put different subject lines and CTAs against each other, you're able to find out what's going to work best for your audience. You're going to find out what they mesh with a little bit more. And also, when planning ahead, you can pay attention to your audience a little bit more and see what's getting the best feedback. Kind of what I was talking about earlier, seeing if, certain times are working out a little bit better. This will help you optimize send times, volume, cadence. Just it helps you just hone in on that audience a little bit more. Also, seed list testing is another great way to plan ahead. With seedless testing, you're able to see how you're placing with different ISPs beforehand, and you can get a better idea on your deliverability health. You can also, block list monitoring, just making sure that you're all clear. We work with Inbox Monster here on our deliverability team. So if you're ever interested in that or working with deliverability services, definitely reach out to your AM or CSM and they'll get you all squared away. Let's see. Let's go next slide. All right. So reinforcing sender best practices. I said we're going to talk about it a little bit earlier, and here we are. ISPs are always going to be looking for marketers to use sender best practices. Some important ones are using engagement segmentation. So targeting users that have engaged with your mail in the past 30 to 60 days. This will be your most, active audience. And this will, using this audience will also not only give you great results, but it'll also really improve your reputation with these different ISPs. And when you increase reputation, you're going to get better inbox placement and continue to see your engagement grow and everything like that. See, sunsetting, and next is sunsetting out highly unengaged contacts. So this is kind of really the other side of the coin from engagement segmentation, making sure that all of your highly unengaged leads are getting out of your list. Usually, as like a general rule of thumb, I usually say, anyone that has been sent X amount of emails, I usually say around like 3 to 5. But it really depends on how much you send on a weekly basis. But anyone that has been sent X amount of emails but hasn't opened anything in a year, these are going to be really good candidates for that sunsetting policy. Anyone that hasn't opened anything in a year is definitely going to start raising some flags to ISPs. They see that they haven't received, they've received some mail, but they haven't opened anything in a good amount of time. When they see that you continue to send to these types of users, it definitely raises flags. So getting these types of users out of your list is really beneficial. And over time they do cause a good amount of damage to your reputation, so always best to get them out. And then there's list maintenance programs. Big one that I like to talk about is like a soft bounce limit. Making sure that anyone that is soft bouncing a consecutive amount of times is getting suppressed after some time. I always say it's kind of similar to the X amount of emails. It really depends on how many times you send per week. But I typically like to stay within 3 to 5. So anyone that has soft bounce 3 or 5 times consecutively will get put on that inactive soft bounce list and then get suppressed. But definitely some good sender best practices to make sure you're reinforcing before you start sending for the holidays.
Right, so how to stay on the nice list. Volume and cadence. Again, volume and cadence is extremely important for reputation establishment. That's basically how the ISP's established reputation is based on your volume and cadence. So ISP's job is to protect users' inbox from unwanted and unsolicited email, as well as protect against potentially dangerous email that coming in. So it's important that you be prepared for the increased scrutiny on the receiver side. So staying relevant. What is your content strategy for marketing emails, considering people will be receiving more emails? Like, how are you going to stand out in the inbox? What times are you going to send? What subject lines? Diversify your content library, those sorts of things. Having a larger content library to choose from will allow for better testing and much better outcomes. Again, when we were talking about A/B split testing, again, having those different call to action, subheaders, subject lines, those sorts of things. Find out what works best for your subscribers. Again, that is how you stay relevant in that inbox. Again, because you're going to be competing with a lot of different providers or senders rather at the same time. Data hygiene. Using cleansing and verification services regularly will help you remove any harmful addresses and keep you off block lists. So as Brendan was talking about, specifically, subscribers that are older than a year, they are very dangerous in the email world. Data older than a year is, there's a good chance one of those email addresses is going to be a spam trap. So we advise any data older than a year, run it through our partner Webula. And they use a suppression list. They do all sorts of things. They do verification as well. Now, anything younger than a year or newer than a year, we usually recommend never bounce. Again, those are going to be regular hard bounces, those sorts of things that people fall off your list, and then on a normal basis. So again, those are the two vendors as far as hygiene is concerned that we use, and we use them for two different things. Again, older data can stay out of trouble with spam traps, those sorts of things. And then segmentation. Segmenting your audience and targeting small groups will help with mailing less engaged users. So suppressing highly unengaged contacts will help keep your domain and IP out of hot water with the ISPs. Again, getting to subscribers, segmenting, targeting the people that you want to send email to is the gist here.
Yeah, right on. Gotta stay on that nice list. There we go.
So volume and cadence. Again, will you be increasing your sending volume this holiday season? So if you are going to be, ISPs and mailbox providers are on high alert. So mailbox providers would be something like Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail. When we speak about ISPs, we talk about Comcast, Cox, those sorts of things, bandwidth providers. They all provide email, but there is a difference between mailbox provider and an actual internet service provider. So that's the difference between those two terms. So mailbox provider, ISP, they are on a high alert this year because of the increased email volume and frequency. Again, spammers know this is going to happen, so they slip. You know what I mean? They push their volume right in there with it and try to scam people. And their job is to protect users' inboxes from unwanted and unsolicited email, as well as protect against malicious and spam and phishing attacks. Again, when I was on the Hotmail Postmaster team, this is a very, very stressful time of year for them. So again, so whether you plan on increasing email volume or frequency, it is imperative that you prepare to increase scrutiny on the receiver side. Okay, and we recommend creating a plan to start ramping up your sending now. Again, doubling your volume from one day to the next will get you in a lot hot water with the ISPs. Unexpected email volume is one of the things, spam signature files that ISPs keep an eye on. Again, the reason for that is because they keep an eye on compromised servers, because compromised servers will double, triple, quadruple volume unexpectedly. So staying off that radar is very imperative. So what do? You increase email volume slowly over a period of time, just like you did when you started out. Maybe when you moved to Acton from a different provider, we had you go through a staged ramp up. And as a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't increase your email volume by more than 50% from the previous day's level or previous week's high point. Again, you want to do this slowly. So what we suggest is that you reach out to your account manager or deliverability support and work with us.
Right on.
All right. Staying relevant and meeting expectations. Engagement is king, and nothing gets you bounced out of the king's court in your user's inbox faster than irrelevant emails. Again, you're going to be competing with a lot of different senders at this time. So again, holiday time is busy for everyone. We'll want to avoid wasting subscribers' time and emails that don't interest them or aren't in line with what they originally signed up for. So again, sending something that's not relevant to what the user signed up for will get you bounced pretty quickly. Yeah, usually a spam complaint, hopefully an unsubscribe, you know what I mean? But if it's a spam complaint, that can damage your reputation. So again, relevancy is key, but never more than during the holiday season. Again, when you increase email volume, your relevancy needs to stay the same. So, and your KPIs, your click-through rates, open rates, click rates, those sorts of things. Another thing to keep in mind is the frequency of the subscriber signed up for. Again, if they signed up to receive 1 email a month, 2 email a month, and you have that mechanism in the background, keep it at that. Increasing that email volume will lose those subscribers in a negative fashion. So again, unsubscribing is probably the easiest way to get a subscriber off your list as far as the negative impact to your reputation. But again, increasing email volume or the number of emails a subscriber will get, if they have told you that they don't want to receive email, will get you bounced. So if you send a weekly email, then you start sending holidays, start sending daily, you will drive the list attrition at a much higher rate. Again, you don't want to drive a ton of list attrition during this time because, again, filling that funnel back starting in January is a little more difficult.
Right on. Thank you, Travis. We're going to talk a little bit about data hygiene and segmentation. Travis touched on this a little bit, but definitely wanted to make sure that we covered it a little bit more. In terms of services, we do have 2 different ones that we work with. Webula is a cleansing service that'll identify like spam traps or any reputational threats that could be hiding out in your list. Really important when you're trying to stay off block list. Any address that is starting to fall into the 1 to 2 years dormant, not really being a used address. Once it hits 2 years, it's officially susceptible to be turned into a spam trap. So definitely making sure that, your list is nice and cleansed and ran through Webula at least 1 or 2 times a year is a really good way to stay off those block lists. Never Bounce is a verification service. So this service is going to tell you if a address is going to hard bounce or not, or if it's an emailable address. I like to use that word. But they're definitely, I think they're really 2 services. They're good to use together. If there was going to be like a general like order of them, I would say run your list through Never Bounce first and get all the verified addresses. And then once you have verified addresses, run those through Webula. And then because spam traps are still going to be a verified address, they're just going to be taken over as, and now identify as a spam trap. So using those together is a really good way to keep your list in a really nice and healthy condition. And then segmentation. You can segment your audience on different behaviors, demographics to really help you just identify what users are engaging with your mail. Really good in like the pre-planning, you can see if a certain section of your audience is engaging with a certain type of mail or maybe at a certain time. Just a lot of different factors go into it, but really could help during the planning stage. But really having a plan for each segment of your list, so you do not only survive the holiday email season, but you flourish. And you really just find out a lot more information from your audience. People are going to be using their inboxes a lot during the holiday season. People, I personally, I love looking at my emails during the holiday season just because I know I'm going to see a lot more email, and people are putting in a lot of effort. So people do want to see your efforts and see your mail, and we want to help you, reach them. So after the holidays are over, you went and you sent some great campaigns, and now it's time to see how they performed. Review your campaigns and see how they performed to your baselines that you set initially. Did you overperform? Did you meet expectations? Did you underperform? See why, if you underperformed, see why. See if a certain mailbox provider, did they block you? If you increased volume, did they put a rate limiting, block on you? We've seen a lot of issues come up in our times, working in deliverability. So really just seeing how things went and see how you can improve the next season, especially, if you're seeing some rate limiting with some mailbox providers, seeing, you know, then it'll kind of like, have some indication that that ramp plan beforehand is going to be really important. If you plan on hitting a certain volume, making sure that you're able to safely build up to that point before you go and, fully start sending to that volume. Just really, really getting an idea of how all these campaigns went and seeing how you can make improvements for the future. And then always continuing to reinforce sender best practices, targeting engaged leads and making sure that those highly engaged users are getting sunsetted out of your list. That is going to be the bread and butter, the name of the game for deliverability. Just really targeting those engaged users and sunsetting out those highly unengaged users. That's going to be really some of the best strategy to help you improve reputation for these different mailbox providers. And then if you're having deliverability issues with any ISPs, make sure to reach out to our deliverability team and work with us to help resolve your issues and get you back on the right track. We can even help you start developing a plan for next year, especially if you see that there is some room for improvements. But definitely reach out to your AM or CSM or to get working with our deliverability team. All right. And this is outside of holiday sending specific, but there are some Google updates that are going to be happening this year and then early next year. So starting December 2023, Google will be deactivating any account that has been 2 years dormant or more. So any account that hasn't been used for 2 years, they will be turning the lights out on those and they will be showing up as a hard bounce. So because of this, you may be seeing an increased number of hard bounces with Google addresses. So just be on the lookout for that. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Travis, on that?
Oh yeah. So normally a hard bounce is 60 to 90 days, and their hard bounces removed from the list. But again, these are the ISPs. Yahoo and Gmail have been leaving hard bounces open for a long period of time, rather than just sunsetting those emails and putting them back into public consumption rotation, so to speak. So
Right on. Thank you. Good note. And then starting February 2024, Google will be changing their sender guidelines a little bit. Anyone that sends over 5,000 Gmail or Google Workspace messages in a day will have to abide by these new requirements. And the main takeaway from that is Google will be requiring DKIM, SPF, and now a DMARC record for those sending 5,000 or over a day. So really making sure that you have a DMARC record. That's going to be a newer one. They're usually pretty strict in terms of like DKIM and SPF. They always want to make sure people are verified, but they are going to be requiring that DMARC record now. It does not have to take any action, so you can have it be P equals none. But they do want to see the DMARC record, and they do want to see that it passes. So those are really the most important things with that. They are overall going to just be tightening sender guidelines. So they are going to be looking at, people that are, they want to see marketers reinforce sender best practices. They want to see that eventually highly unengaged leads are getting out of your list, and then they're not going to continue to receive emails. That was another big point in that to me. Another point that I saw within those changes is they're going to anyone that has above a 0.3 spam complaint rate. That's when they're going to start. You'll start seeing issues with them. They possibly could start placing blocks and things of that nature. But they pointed out a 0.3 spam complaint rate specifically. But yeah, that's it for Google changes. Let's see. Now we're moving on to the Q&A portion of our webinar. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A portion, anything like that, and we'll get them covered.
So the first question here, is there a way to find out if we are on a block list? So yeah, there is. We use Deliverability tools provider Inbox Monster, so that does our block list monitoring for us. However, you can use mxtoolbox.com, and that is a great way to monitor for block list.
Yeah, and then I see another one. Do you have average stats for open rate, CTR, opt-outs, etc.? I found stats on Google varies widely. You are correct on that. Google open rates and everything really range so much for them. And honestly, for just general metrics, it really does range. It mainly depends on your audience. Is your audience mainly B2C? Is it mainly B2B? It really depends, and especially with Google, it really depends. And also, Apple MPP did throw a good little wrench in the system with metrics lately, with them having a proxy open, and especially when it comes down to Google and consumer domains, a lot more consumer domains tend to get that proxy open rather than B2B domains. So it really is hard to tell. But typically I say like within, healthy open rates for a B2C tend to be like at least over 20% ish. And, open rates for B2B, at least like over 10% ish. Like it really depends on your audience. What do you think, Travis? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, my client list anyway, I go minimum of 25% as far as open rates. Some of my clients, again, when you're sending to targeted lists with targeted subscribers, I'll have customers that'll send 10,000 emails and get, 77% open rate. And again, but that's getting it down to segmenting down to your active engaged audience. And so really what you're depending on what's your open click-through rate, what's your KPIs for, would be applied. I think it would be better applied to what's your KPI for 30-day actives, what's your KPI for 60-day actives, what's your KPI for 90-day active. And then you can kind of watch that drop off. Because again, each group within your list is going to have a different rate, different engagement rate. And again, that's going to be something key. So industry-wide, every industry is different. Pharmaceutical, auto, retail, nonprofits. So everything, it varies greatly between different, segments of the industry segments. So again, what I say is look at your own list, look at who your engagement windows, and then start looking at those numbers specifically. All right. Oh, so can you elaborate, next one, can you elaborate on what DKIM, SPF, and DMARC records are? So those are authentication records, or authentication measures used by the ISPs. So DKIM is domain keys identified mail. Domain keys identified mail used to be two different authentication measures. Used to be domain keys, which was pioneered by Return Path back in the day, and Yahoo. And then what they did was they merged with identified mail, which kind of was a different one. And so they came up with DKIM as an RSA hash type of authentication measure. SPF is sender policy framework. So basically that is a quick authentication measure, much like a PIN with your debit card. And then DMARC is basically a policy put into place for anti-spoofing. So these are all infrastructure. Authentication measures used to what I would call infrastructure. So they all specifically deal with infrastructure and DNS.
Great stuff. Yeah, I always like the reference of DKIM being like a handshake. It's just like this is who I am. Like you're putting a name to the face. Like you're signing it and saying like this domain, I am this domain, like this is me. No one is trying to impersonate me or anything like that.
Yeah, having that RSA hash that matches up. So again, you have a public and a private key. When you send email to the ISPs, they check your private key against your public key. When they match, through the door you go.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the group? Yeah, go ahead, Bren.
I got so many references for authentication records.
Could be here all day.
Yeah, I could be here all day. The bouncer at a club, he's sitting there checking IDs at the door.
Club, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to make sure you got all your authentications ready to go before you can enter. If not, you're gonna probably have to wait in line. You'll probably get rejected. You know what I mean?
No staying out late for you.
Yeah, you got to make sure you have all those DNS records.
Yeah.
If you want to party.
So we got a few minutes left. If anybody would like to send in any questions, like us to elaborate on anything that we covered today.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you had any questions on certain slides or anything like that. More than happy to answer them.
Again, as far as for me, Brandon, the biggest takeaway for this period of time, for the next 2.5 months for the holiday season, again, all encompassing, right? Is again going to be when you are increasing email volume, don't be jumping 100, 200, 300%. So again, if you're sending 100,000 a week, 150,000 a week, don't triple, quadruple that email volume in a couple days. Create a ramp up. So again, you don't want to add more than 50%, as Brandon alluded to in the webinar here, day over day. So 100,000. So send 150 the next day. If you know what I mean, 100, 225 the next day after that, so on and so forth until you get to the email volume that you would like to get to. Again, the other thing to keep in mind, again, when you are increasing email volume, ramp up. Keep an eye on your KPIs. Keep an eye on those open rates, click rates, click to open rates. Again, click to open rate speaks specifically to your call to action. Okay, so when your click to open rate is dropping, that means your call to action is lagging a little bit. Okay, but keeping those the KPIs high. Again, you don't want to ruin your reputation by sending to more people. Okay, that is going to ruin what you've established throughout the year and for the rest of your holidays, really. So again, the biggest takeaways for me is ramping up, keeping an eye on your making sure that your KPIs stay high, and then making sure that when you are sending to older data, clean the data first. You don't want to start out the holiday season with a spam house listing. You just don't. So,
It's not fun.
Brandon,
Yeah, it's
what
not
are your
fun.
biggest takeaways today, Brandon?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Pretty much those were my biggest takeaways, really just paying attention to volume. And if you are going to increase volume, just doing it at a safe rate. Um, that just, different mailbox providers are really temperamental when it comes to volume. But I did have another question kind of come through really quick. We'll answer this one real fast. This one's pretty straightforward. It's just, does this holiday sending, we're talking about holidays and everything like that. Does this also count towards, the marketing holidays, Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Yes, absolutely. This will absolutely count towards those holidays as well. It's really the whole holiday season, but especially during those marketing holidays, ISPs and the mailbox providers are going to be on very high alert, just waiting for all those marketing messages and mainly just trying to keep their users safe. With all these marketing messages, like Travis mentioned earlier, spammers are just going to try to slide right in there with all the rest of the sending. They're going to try to sneak past, and it's really all these different mailbox providers' jobs to try to ensure that their users are safe. So ramping up volume at a safe rate, making sure you're not, contacting any leads that are going to do damage to your reputation. But yeah, definitely, this all definitely counts towards Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and those different marketing holidays.
Awesome.
But yeah, we'll do a last call for questions.
I think that's it.
Cool. Well, let's see. Let me go.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending and all the great questions. We'll be sending out the slides and recording within 24 to 48 hours.